On this episode of Net Wins, what could have been 6 careers the formula never got to finish counting. For more like this, visit netwins.substack.com. The NetWins formula is a backward looking instrument. It counts what happened. It has no mechanism for what should have happened and what would have happened and what was on its way to happening before something intervened. This article is about the players the formula never got to finish counting. Some careers were ended by injury, some by illness, some by choices that cost everything. What they share is the quality of what was already there before it was taken away, and the particular weight of imagining the numbers that were never produced. Derrick Rose. He was the youngest MVP in NBA history at 22 years old. In 2010-11, he led the Bulls to the best record in the Eastern Conference, averaged 25 points and 7 assists per game, and produced 6.51 net wins on a 62-win team. The formula recorded the best guard season of that year and one of the best guard seasons in the database. Then, April 28, 2012, game one of the first round against Philadelphia, the Bulls were up by 12 with a minute and 22 left. Rose drove to the basket with no contact and landed on his knee. The ACL tore without anyone touching him. A hush went through the United Center that people who were there still describe the same way 30 years later. What followed was one of the most painful, extended sequences in the history of the sport. Torn ACL in 2012, torn meniscus in the right knee in 2013, torn meniscus again in 2015, torn meniscus in the left knee in 2017. Each time he came back, each time something else gave way. The explosiveness that made him the youngest MVP, the first step that no defender could calculate, the elevation that let him finish over players a foot taller, slowly and irreversibly eroded. He played until 2024. He averaged 17.4 points per game for his career. He was, by any measure, a good NBA player for 16 years. But the player who won the MVP in 2011 was not the player who retired in 2024, and everyone who watched both versions of him knows it. Rose himself said, "I asked God that numerous times. After a while, I stopped asking. I know I had to roll with the punches, and that's part of being from Chicago." The formula has 8.54. The player the formula was looking at in 2011 was heading for somewhere north of plus 60. Anthony Hardaway. Penny Hardaway arrived in the NBA in 1993 as one of the most complete young players the league had seen. 6'7", point guard skills, the wingspan to defend multiple positions, a jump shot that was still developing, and a ceiling that people around him described in superlatives they usually reserve for once-in-a-generation players. His best 3 seasons produced averages of 4.84, 6.16, and 2.71 net wins, respectively. The 95-96 season at 6.16 on a 60-win Magic team was among the best individual seasons of the decade for a guard. He was 24 years old. He played 15 seasons in total, but the player in those first 3 peak seasons was one of the best in the world. Then his knees began to deteriorate. Serious patella tendon problems in both knees starting in 97 altered his game permanently. He was never again the player who had pushed Shaq's Orlando teams to back-to-back finals appearances. He played until 2007, but in a diminished form. A sculptor had lost the use of his hands producing work that only reminded people of what used to be there. The formula cannot show you the career arc that was visible in 96. It can only show you 6 productive seasons and then a long, quiet decline. The player in those 6 seasons was one of the best in the world. The formula ends up with minus 1.39 for Vin Baker's career. That number carries a story that has nothing to do with basketball. Baker was a 4-time All-Star and one of the better power forwards in the league in the mid-90s. His 97-98 season on a 61-win team produced 5.97. He was 26 years old and positioned as a cornerstone of a franchise that had just reached the finals. That alcoholism took over, not quietly, not gradually. He went from an all-star to waved in the space of a few seasons. He acknowledged later he was showing up the game drunk. The Celtics, who paid him $35 million in 2001, released him after 2 seasons when his weight had ballooned and his performance had become unreliable. He ended up working at a Starbucks in Rhode Island. He got sober. He found his way back. The formula records a career of .18 across 13 seasons, essentially 0 because the back half erased most of the front. What the number cannot convey is the quality of the player in those first 5 seasons before the disease consumed him. Baker at his peak was genuinely excellent. His first 4 seasons on bad Milwaukee teams produced negative numbers because the losing contacts dragged everything down, but the 97-98 season on a 61-win Sonics team showed what he was capable of when the pieces around him were right. The formula only got to see that once. Danny Manning was the first overall pick in 1988 and considered one of the most complete forwards in college basketball history. He was drafted by a Clippers team that had been among the worst franchises in professional sports for years and arrived as a genuine reason for optimism. 8 games into his rookie season, he tore the ACL in his right knee. He returned in 89-90 and produced solid seasons, but tore the ACL in the same knee again in 91. Two tears, same knee before his career had properly begun. He played 11 seasons in total and was genuinely effective in stretches, particularly with the Phoenix Suns in 94-95, where he produced 5.83 on a 59-win team. But the player who had been projected as a franchise cornerstone in 1988 was never fully available. The formula has 10.07, accumulated across 15 seasons, interrupted and abbreviated by knees that were simply not reliable. What Manning might have been with one healthy first what Manning might have been when healthy his first 5 years is impossible to calculate. The formula can only count the seasons it was given. It was not given enough of them. Reggie Lewis died on July 27, 1993, during an off-season workout at Brandeis University. He collapsed and could not be resuscitated. He was 27 years old. He had been named team captain of the Boston Celtics to replace Larry Bird. In his final 2 seasons, he averaged 20.8 points per game. He was the next Celtic, the bridge between the Bird era and whatever came after, and he was dead at 27 in an empty gymnasium on a summer afternoon. The formula is 18.54 over 6 seasons, an average of 3.09 per year. He was still improving. His last 2 seasons were the best of his career. The formula was looking at a player who had not reached his peak. The Celtics had already lost Len Bias to a cocaine overdose in 1986, 2 days after drafting him second overall. Then Reggie Lewis 7 years later. The two franchise-altering players, both gone before the formula could count what they were going to become. The Celtics did not return to relevance until the mid 2000s. The connection between those two losses in that decade of mediocrity is not subtle. Lewis's number 35 hangs in the rafters at TD Garden. He's one of only two Celtics ever retired number without a championship. The formula has Maurice Stokes, 3 seasons, career total 1.07, peak 1.03 in his final year. Those numbers look modest, and the context explains why. He played on Rochester and Cincinnati Royals, teams that went 31-41 twice and 33-39 in his final season. The formula normalizes against what a team needs to win, and on losing teams, even excellent individual contributions compress towards zero. What those numbers cannot capture is what the raw averages show. In 1956-57, he pulled down 1,256 rebounds in a single season, setting the NBA record. In 3 seasons, he averaged 17.3 rebounds and 5.3 assists per game. Contemporary observers compared him to Magic Johnson, a 6'7" forward who handled the ball like a point guard and rebounded like a center. 3 All-Star selections in every single season he played. On March 12, 1958, Stokes drove to the basket in Minneapolis, made contact, fell to the floor, hitting his head. He was revived with smelling salts and sent back into the game. 3 days later, after contributing 12 points and 15 rebounds in a playoff game, he suffered a seizure on the team's flight back to Cincinnati. The plane made an emergency landing. Stokes was hospitalized. He never played again. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic encephalopathy, a traumatic brain injury that left him paralyzed. The Royals removed him from the payroll immediately. There was no pension, no medical plan, no safety net. His teammate Jack Twyman became his legal guardian and spent years raising funds to cover his medical bills, which approached $100,000 per year. Stokes lived as a quadriplegic until his death in 1970 at age 36. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2004. The formula has 1.07. On better teams with his career not ending at 24, the number would look very different. What it cannot measure is a player averaging 17.3 rebounds and 5.3 assists per game who was only just getting started. The careers listed here range from 3 seasons to 15 seasons. They were ended by torn ligaments, deteriorating joints, alcoholism, heart conditions, and traumatic brain injury. The causes are as different as the players. What they share is the quality of the peak. Every player on this list in the seasons the formula could count was producing at a level that suggested a significantly longer and more complete career was ahead. The formula does not get to project forward. It only counts backward. In each case, what it found looking back was someone who was heading somewhere the numbers never got to record. The database has nearly 300 players. These 6 are the ones whose chapters ended in the middle of a sentence. The full net wins database and every season is free at willf123.github.io/NBA-net-wins. Next episode coming up is Shaq. Thank you.